So coaches around the world rugby scene, how many of them are imports? How many of them are foreigners? Um, I did a video a while back about international rugby teams for November and how many foreign-born players did they have in their squads. It was kind of a blunt look at the squads because I was only looking at their place of birth, not necessarily where their parents were from or where they were raised, all that kind of stuff. But in that video, a few people did ask me kind of, hey, how about the coaches? How does that compare? So I thought, yep, sure, let's have a look at this and see just how many. And I've only looked at the top 10 countries. Just how many of them have got imported coaches. I'm not just talking about head coaches. I'm talking about the whole coaching teams. Yeah, just to see if there's a trend. Which countries look to import more? Which countries look to perhaps use homegrown talent? How does that reflect in the results? But yeah, we'll have a look, and you guys can let me know your thoughts in the end. I know with the foreign-born players one, some people were just like, just show me the numbers, get on with it. So I'll put a number here. Skip to this point if you just want the numbers, because I will have a few things to say just before I start about where the data came from. So I will say, finding information on coaches other than the head coach is actually pretty bloody hard. I will say credit to Argentina, to Wales, to Scotland and Ireland for actually listing a profile of their coaching staff, their management team, like the physio and the doctor and the kit man, all that kind of stuff. They actually put information for all those people on their sites. Nobody else did. It was pretty hard to find any information, and it seems like nobody really cares about where your coaches come from or who they are or what's their role. So yeah, the other ones I've kind of had to dig, and because I'm digging and I'm a one-man research band, I will put a caveat out there that some of these roles may have changed. I tried to find the most recent news I could about who was assisting with what role. So as far as I am aware, they are accurate, but there's potential that some of these roles have changed because some of the information was not all up to date. But I tried to go with the most up-to-date one I could. Likewise, I've not gone quite as blunt as the players video. I've looked at a bit more about where a person was because there's far few people to look at. You know, the squads video, I was looking at hundreds of players. Here it's a handful of people. Most of these squads, 4 or 5 coaches are listed. So I was able to have a little bit more of a deeper look at what their background is. And I have only picked people with some kind of coach in their title. Whether it's defense coach, backs coach, you know, skills coach, kicking coach. If you're a coach, you're on here. If you weren't a coach, if you're some kind of manager or analyst, I didn't include them. The Argentinian ones were a little bit more difficult being in Spanish. The translation didn't translate to coach, but I took a best guess at the top 4 guys who are coaches. But I'll start with the teams at the bottom who are not including any imported coaches, then work my way up to the team which has the fewest kind of homegrown coaches, and then at the end we can have a look and see where most of these coaches come from. So being a Kiwi, I'm going to start with New Zealand. New Zealand has 4 coaches that I could see. All 4 of them, from what I could gather, are homegrown coaches. They're all New Zealand coaches. All have that connection to New Zealand. Obviously Steve Hansen's in charge, but the other 3 guys there as well, all from New Zealand. So New Zealand's #1 in the world, and they are 100% Kiwi driven. Kind of no surprises there. New Zealand's not really big on importing rugby coaches. We're more of an exporter in that regard. Next, and this is in no particular order, I've just kind of gone with the way that I wrote them down. South Africa, also 100% South African coaching staff. Although I would say, you know, Erasmus is in charge, but Matt Proudfoot, although he's South African born and raised, from what I could see, he has a Scottish grandmother and he did play for Scotland. But I mean, I suppose that muddies the waters a little bit, but for all intents and purposes for me, he is a South African chap, and he's coaching in the South African team. So they're also 100%. France, and given their current state of play, there's perhaps an argument to be made that they shouldn't be, but they are 100% French coached. Jacques Brunel in charge with these other 3 guys as well. So 4 from 4, locally coached French team. They're 100% French, and yeah, the results haven't been there of late, but I guess if there's something to be said for being an employer of local talent, they are it. Next, also 100%, Argentina. Again, their coaching titles didn't quite match, but you got Mario Ledesma there as the main man, and these other three guys as well. Quesada's title was more like some kind of consultant, but I noticed, in the November internationals, Quesada was there with all the coaching staff, kind of in the box watching the game with Ledesma. So I figure if he ain't a coach, then I'm not quite sure what he would be classed as. So yeah, I've included him as as one of those four coaches for Argentina. And lastly, in terms of the 100%ers, it is Australia. Australia, a bit like South Africa, has a wee bit of a grey area, but you got Checker in charge. They got 5 men on their coaching staff. And then Simon Raiwalui, excuse the pronunciation, he's their forwards coach from memory, forwards or scrum. He's the guy who replaced Ledesma basically when he left for Argentina. He is New Zealand born, but grew up in Australia and played for Fiji. But it seems like those kind of formative years, the most important years of his life, which made him the man he is, those were spent in Australia. So I'm kind of happy to include him as an Australian. I would hazard a guess that he holds an Australian passport as an Australian citizen. So yeah, those 5 of the top 10 are all 100% locally grown coaches. But in terms of world rankings, there might be something to be said for importing, because apart from the top 1, you're looking down the list a bit with these teams here. But obviously it's not as simple as that. There's plenty of factors at play, not just the coach. But yeah. Next, as we get to a coaching staff, which is a 5-man team. It's 60-40 in terms of the split. So 60% local, 40% imported. So 3 locals, 2 imports. And that's these guys. That's Wales. Wales' squad is, the coaching squad. Warren Gatland's the head coach from New Zealand. Sean Edwards, the defence coach, is from England. And the other 3 coaches over here are all local Welsh coaches. So it's still more than half that's local, and Wales' spot in the world is looking pretty good right now. So yeah, I mean, Warren Gatland's been in Wales almost that long that you could pretty much classify him as Welsh at this point, but for this I'm putting him down as a Kiwi. Next, and with a 50-50 split, ooh, my son is shouting. He not happy about me talking about England. England is a 50-50 split, with Eddie Jones and John Mitchell being the foreign coaches. So obviously one from Australia, one from New Zealand, and then there's these 2 guys who are locally grown, from England, English coaches. So 50-50 split. Only 4 guys that I could find on that coaching roster. As I said, there perhaps are more, but those are the guys that I could find. England don't have the names listed like some of the other countries, so forgive me if that is wrong, but that's what I found. Next, then we get to Scotland. Scotland is also likewise 50-50. They've got Gregor Townsend, who is local as the head coach, but they do have Matt Taylor from Australia and Danny Wilson from England. With the UK thing, you could class him as local, but in rugby terms, I'm classing him as foreign. So obviously a UK passport makes that same issue, like, maybe he was just born in England, Scottish parents. I don't know his history, but I'm putting him down as not Scottish for this one. So yeah, Scotland with 50-50. Then it's to Ireland. Ireland do have a 5-man coaching team, but only 2 of those 5 are from Ireland. So they are the first to kind of slip into that territory of more imported coaches than locally grown. So you got Joe Schmidt, who's from New Zealand. Obviously he became an Irish citizen, so you could argue that he's a local coach, but I think it would be a little bit of a stretch to make that argument. But obviously he's very committed to the country. He seems to love it over there, and it seems like he really agonized over his decision to leave. But kind of like Warren Gatland, he's about as local as you can get after having moved there. But for this, I'm putting him down as foreign. Andy Farrell from England, and Greg Feek also from New Zealand. So there is that imported element to that. But interesting one with Ireland, you got like guys like Ronan O'Gara, doing their coaching stripes now throughout. There's various other guys doing coaching at high level. So I would expect, especially with Ireland's kind of rise up the rankings over the last few years, that more Irish coaches will start emerging as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Wales does the same. So yeah, number 2 in the world, but on this, showing a fair few imports. And lastly, Fiji, who are looking good on their world rankings compared to, where we traditionally think they are located. 100% imported coaching team from what I could find. John McKee, the head coach, he's got an Australia and New Zealand connection, but I think Wellington raised. Andre Bell, New Zealand, Neil Barnes, New Zealand, Alan Muir, New Zealand, and Peter Ryan, Australia. That's the 5-man coaching team that I was able to find on a Fijian news website. So how accurate that still is, I'm not 100% sure, because I'm not sure if they employ them full-time or whether they're kind of throughout the year. But yeah, that's the coaching staff that I found for Fiji. So I suppose it's a little bit disappointing that there's no homegrown coaches there, but I'm sure there are reasons to import coaches in all kinds of situations. So yeah, that's the list. Fiji up the top, several countries down the bottom. But it is interesting that for the minute, it seems to be the Northern Hemisphere teams, except for France, which have a focus on imported coaches. But they're also doing pretty well in the standings, and one would expect that over time, if these rankings kind of remain true and the talent keeps emerging from these countries, that more of these guys will move into coaching. Like New Zealand's been dominant for a long time, so that's probably one reason that New Zealand coaches have been consistently exported. Other countries as well. But yeah, one would assume that if these rankings stay the way they are, we'll see more coaches, either homegrown or northern ones, being exported. I mean, the fact that Ronan O'Gara is down here with the Crusaders now already shows a little bit of a shift that we're willing to take in guys from other parts of the world and take on that knowledge as well. So in terms of where are all these coaches from these 10 countries, so Fiji with none, Scotland had 2, Ireland had 2, Wales had 3, Argentina 4, South Africa 4, France 4, England 6. So England has a couple that are based abroad. Australia 7, and New Zealand with 12. So kind of far and away the top one there. But like I said, that kind of matches with the rugby results over kind of the past 10 years, that New Zealand have kind of been towards the top. So they're exporting a few players and a few guys who move on to coaching. But yeah, I would doubt if the situation would remain as stable as it is at the moment. I would say, yeah, we can expect to see more coaches from those Northern Hemisphere countries, which aren't all using local coaches at the moment, to kind of come forward as things progress. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on those numbers. As I said, it's all down to my research, so far from an exact science, but it is a best effort from me. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.